Have you ever felt a simple touch set your heart racing? Not because it was wrong, but because it awakened something you'd long forgotten? It happened to me one summer afternoon, on a sunlit beach, with the warmth of the ocean breeze and the unexpected feeling of Aiden's hand brushing against my back, spreading sunscreen across my skin. I told myself it was nothing, just a favor between family. But deep down, something shifted, subtle, almost invisible, yet undeniable. Stay with me, because what began as an innocent day by the sea would unravel into a story I never imagined living. Before we dive in, if you've ever felt the heavy weight of loneliness, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me share more real stories like this, reminding us that even in our darkest moments, we're not truly alone. Now let's begin. There was a time when I believed marriage meant never feeling alone again. Mark and I had built a life that looked perfect from the outside. A comfortable house in a quiet town, 2 kids under one roof, and years of memories layered into the walls like old wallpaper. But time has a way of hollowing things out without you even noticing. Work, routines, responsibilities, they all crept in like silent thieves. Mark used to look at me like I was the center of his world. Now, most days, I was lucky to get a distracted nod or a half-hearted, "How was your day?" Before he buried himself in emails and late-night meetings. We were living side by side, but it felt more like parallel lives. 2 strangers passing in the hallway, orbiting the same space but never touching. At first, I told myself it was normal. Life got busy. Love matured into something quieter. But deep down, I missed the little things. The stolen glances across a crowded room, the way he used to reach for my hand without thinking, the soft laughter that used to fill our evenings. And somewhere in that quiet sadness, a different loneliness began to grow. The kind you can't fill with chores or noise or even the love you pour into your children. It was the kind that sat heavy in your chest, whispering in the quiet moments, asking, "Do you even exist to him anymore?" Emma, our daughter, was still young and full of life, always running between school and sleepovers, too busy to notice the distance widening between her parents. Aiden was different. He was Mark's son from his first marriage, not my blood, but someone I had helped raise since he was a boy. Now, at 19, he was no longer the child I once knew, but a young man with quiet eyes that seemed to see too much. There were moments when I caught him looking at me with something almost like sadness. A silent understanding that I wasn't as invisible as I felt. Terrified me, and yet, a small part of me clung to it, just knowing that someone still saw me. That morning, as I packed the beach bag with sunscreen and towels, I told myself today would be different. Today, I would feel the sun on my skin, the breeze in my hair. Today, I would remember that I was still alive. The drive to the beach was filled with the lazy hum of summer. Windows down, the air heavy with salt and sun, music low and crackling through the car speakers. Aiden sat beside me, sunglasses hiding his eyes, one arm dangling out the window. He didn't say much, but then again, he never really did. His presence alone was enough to fill the space, steady and grounding. I stole glances at him from time to time, remembering how just a few years ago, he would chatter endlessly about school and video games. Now he was nearly a man, and the silence between us felt comfortable, but thick with something unnamed. The closer we got to the coast, the more the world seemed to blur into endless blue and gold. Waves crashed in the distance, the smell of sunscreen and fried food hanging in the air. We found a quieter spot near the dunes, far from the crowded lifeguard stations and noisy families. Aiden set up the umbrella while I spread the towels across the soft, hot sand. For a moment, we just stood there, letting the sun bake our skin and the wind whip around us. "It's nice out," Aiden said, his voice casual, almost careless. I smiled, the corners of my mouth lifting without effort. "It is." I peeled off my sandals, feeling the sand scald my feet before it gave way to a cooler layer just beneath the surface. Aiden tugged off his shirt, and for a split second, my breath caught, the quick, irrational awareness of the body he had grown into. I turned away quickly, pretending to dig through the beach bag for sunscreen. "Could you help me put this on my back?" I asked, my voice light, almost playful. There was a beat of hesitation before he nodded and took the bottle from my hand. I turned, kneeling on the towel, and felt the first cool touch of lotion on my skin. Aiden's hands were careful, almost too careful, as if afraid to press too hard. The moment stretched longer than it should have. The heat of the sun, the whisper of his fingertips, the soft hush of the waves. I closed my eyes, letting myself pretend, just for a heartbeat, that it was only the sun making my skin burn. First, it was nothing. The cool smear of lotion across my upper back. Aiden's fingers moved with awkward gentleness, his touch hesitant, respectful. I focused on the feeling of the sun, the soft roar of the ocean, the distant laughter of children playing along the shore. Anything but the subtle tremble in his hands. Anything but the sudden awareness blooming under my skin. Harder, I said softly, trying to make it sound casual. The words slipped out before I could stop them. I needed more pressure against the tightness in my shoulders, that was all. Or so I told myself. He obeyed, pressing his palms firmer against my back, working the lotion into my skin in slow, steady circles. I could feel the heat from his hands seep through me, sinking deeper than it should have. Each movement traced a line of fire down my spine, igniting nerves I thought had long since dulled. I shifted slightly on the towel, pretending to adjust my position, when really I was just trying to steady my breathing. Aiden said nothing, and neither did I. The space between us thickened, not with words, but with something heavier, unspeakable. His hands traveled lower, just brushing the small of my back before retreating quickly, almost guiltily. I should have stopped him. I should have laughed it off, made a joke, broken the spell. But instead, I stayed perfectly still, heart hammering against my ribs, eyes squeezed shut. And for one fleeting, dangerous second, I let myself imagine what it would feel like if he didn't stop. If you're still here with me, thank you. It means more than you know. Things are about to get even more complicated. Before we go deeper, please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Your support helps me keep telling these stories that are sometimes too hard to say out loud. The public beach showers were almost deserted, hidden behind the dunes and worn wooden fences. The last rays of sunlight painted everything in molten gold. We stepped into adjoining stalls, the cold cement underfoot slick from a day's worth of salt and sand. I watched Aiden step under the water, his body outlined in the fading light, strong, lean, more man than boy now. The water clung to him, tracing every muscle, every line I shouldn't be noticing. Heart pounding, I turned away, pretending to fuss with my hair. Then I felt him behind me. Without warning, Aiden closed the distance, stepping into my space, so close I could feel the heat radiating from his skin, even through the cool spray of the shower. "I'll help," he said, voice rough, almost a whisper. Before I could react, his hands found my waist, low, firm, steady. His touch sent a jolt through me, a forbidden warmth that spread like wildfire beneath my skin. Slowly, deliberately, his palms slid up the curve of my sides, tracing my ribcage, my spine, until they rested at the small of my back. Each movement burned into me, leaving trails of heat that the cold water couldn't wash away. I swayed, just slightly, unable to stop myself. The world narrowed to the space between us. No longer space at all, just a thin, electric current humming from skin to skin. I could feel his breath against my neck, hot and ragged. I closed my eyes, willing my body to listen to reason, but my heart betrayed me, slamming against my ribs, screaming yes to every forbidden inch between us. When I opened my eyes, he was already watching me, his gaze heavy, intense, magnetic. My hand brushed against his, a mistake, a choice, and for a single suspended second, we hovered there, the barest fraction away from something we could never take back. I leaned in, just a breath, just a heartbeat, before the crushing wave of reality slammed into me. I stumbled back, pretending to laugh, shaking the water from my hair. "We should get going," I said, voice too high, too bright, cracking under the weight of everything unsaid. Aiden hesitated, eyes dark and unreadable, before nodding silently. The spell broke, but the hunger it awakened stayed, thrumming in the spaces between our skin, heavy and alive. The ride back was suffocating, not because of the heat or the sand sticking to our skin, but because of everything that hadn't been said, everything that still crackled between us like a live wire. The windows were down, but the air felt too thick to breathe. I gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, my knuckles pale with the effort not to look at him. Aiden sat silent beside me, one hand clenched on his thigh, the muscles in his forearm taut, coiled like a spring. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught him looking at me. Not a glance, but a stare, raw and burning. My heart hammered so loudly I was sure he could hear it. At the next red light, the car jerked to a stop, and without thinking, without breathing, I turned toward him. He was already leaning in, time fractured, split into before and after. His hand cupped my jaw, firm and shaking at the same time, and then his mouth crashed into mine. Desperate, hungry, like he'd been holding it back for years. I gasped against him, the sound swallowed by the kiss, by the way his lips moved over mine. Clumsy at first, then surer, deeper. One of his hands fisted in the damp fabric of my swimsuit strap, pulling me closer across the console until our bodies collided awkwardly but without hesitation. I moaned, soft, helpless. Into his mouth, the sound shocking me almost as much as him. His other hand slipped around my waist, finding the bare skin under my shirt, splaying wide and hot across my back. Every nerve ending in my body lit up like fireworks. My fingers dug into his shoulders, anchoring myself to something solid while the rest of the world spun away. When the light turned green, neither of us moved. Cars honked behind us, blaring into the heavy air. But all I could focus on was the way Aiden's breath hitched against my lips, the way his hands trembled where they gripped me. Finally, gasping, I tore myself away, my head falling back against the seat, lungs heaving. Aiden stayed frozen, chest rising and falling like a man drowning on dry land. We didn't speak. Words were useless now. Everything we weren't supposed to want was already written into the air between us. Messy, undeniable, alive. And I knew, with bone-deep certainty, that this was just the beginning. We didn't speak a word for the rest of the ride. The silence between us wasn't empty, pulsed. By the time we pulled into the driveway, night had settled like a heavy curtain. Mark was still gone. Emma was asleep. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I unlocked the door. Aiden followed behind me, not too close, but not far enough either. Every step we took echoed with everything we weren't saying. I went to the kitchen half out of instinct, poured a glass of water. My hands trembled. Aiden stood in the doorway, eyes on me, watching, waiting. I avoided his gaze, but I could feel it burning, pulling me apart piece by piece. "I'm going to shower," I said, voice hoarse. I made it halfway up the stairs before I heard him behind me. I should have stopped. I should have turned around, told him no. But I didn't. Inside the bathroom, the world felt smaller, dimmer. I stood in front of the mirror, palms flat on the counter, breathing hard. And then he was there.
No knock.
No word. Just the door swinging open, the soft thud of it closing behind him. Our eyes met in the mirror. He stepped closer. I didn't move. His fingers brushed my shoulder, featherlight, then slid down my arm. Goosebumps bloomed across my skin. He touched my waist, turning me gently to face him. And suddenly, his mouth was on mine again. Deeper this time, hungrier, darker. This kiss wasn't desperate. It was inevitable. Our bodies collided like tides, waves crashing, devouring, returning again and again. His hands mapped me without hesitation, dragging fire across every inch of me he dared to claim. My back hit the wall. My breath left me. I melted into him, everything rational unraveling at the seams. I knew what was happening. I knew what it meant, but I didn't stop. Not when he whispered my name like it was a confession. Not when my fingers found the edge of his shirt. Not when everything else, the past, the guilt, the wrongness, disappeared into the heat of his hands. The next morning, Sunlight poured through the blinds like nothing had changed, but everything had. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, still tasting his breath on my lips. My body ached in places I hadn't felt in years. Not from pain, but from being seen, touched, taken. I wrapped the blanket tighter around myself, as if I could hide from what I had done, from what I had let happen. Downstairs, I heard movement, soft footsteps, the clink of glass. Aiden was already awake. I didn't know whether to stay hidden or face him. Part of me wanted to run. The other wanted to see if he would touch me again. I finally came down an hour later. My steps were careful, slow. He was sitting at the kitchen table, back straight, hands around a cup of coffee like nothing had happened. But when our eyes met, just for a second, I felt it. That same heat, that same pull. He didn't say a word, just watched me, quietly, as I moved through the room, pretending everything was fine. But nothing was fine. I burned with guilt, but also with something worse, want. It crawled under my skin, coiled in my belly. Every time I looked at him, I remembered how his hands felt. Every time I heard his voice, my pulse spiked. He didn't avoid me. If anything, he stayed closer. He passed behind me in the hallway too slowly. He watched me cook, clean, breathe, and I let him. I let it all happen. Nights became the hardest. I lay beside Mark, his back turned, the weight of our cold marriage pressing down on me like a blanket soaked in regret. And in the dark, I thought of Aiden, his breath, his hands, the way he made me feel alive again. Like a woman, not a ghost. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop, because part of me, the part no one ever saw, was already his. It didn't happen right away. There were days of distance, of silence stretched thin like glass. I thought maybe he'd moved on. Maybe what happened had scared him like it scared me, but it didn't, because one night he came to me again. I was folding laundry in my bedroom, alone. Mark was on another business trip. Emma was sleeping. The house was quiet in that way that felt loaded, like the air itself was waiting for something to break. The knock was soft, barely there. I didn't answer. Aiden opened the door anyway. He stood there watching me. No words, just heat.
Intention.
I can't stop thinking about you, he said, voice low, raw. My heart slammed in my chest. I shook my head. We shouldn't, but my voice cracked on the last word. He heard it, saw it, knew. In 2 steps, he was in front of me. His hands cupped my face, and before I could breathe, his mouth was on mine again. This time, I didn't fight it. The basket of laundry hit the floor. Clothes spilled like we had dropped every excuse, every boundary, every reason to stay apart. His mouth moved down my neck, hot and searching. My hands fumbled against his chest, gripping fabric, then skin. I whispered his name, a plea, a surrender, and he answered with touch, bold, possessive, worshipful. We didn't make it to the bed. The carpet burned my knees. The walls swallowed our sounds. He kissed me like he needed to remember how I tasted. I held him like I was afraid to let go again. And when it was over, when we lay tangled in the mess we'd made, I didn't cry. I only asked one thing: will this ever stop? Aiden didn't answer. He just reached for me again. Started with the way Emma looked at me. Not suspicion, not yet, but something shifted. Like she noticed the silence between Aiden and me wasn't just silence anymore. At dinner, Aiden sat too close. He passed me the salt, fingers brushing mine too long. He smiled at me, small, soft, and I felt the blood drain from my face. Mark didn't notice. He never did. His phone buzzed. He answered. Business as usual. But Emma's eyes narrowed. Are you okay, Mom? She asked. I dropped my fork. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment, every glance, every touch, every time I didn't say no. The air felt thick with something waiting to be uncovered. I started flinching when Aiden entered the room. I stopped wearing the perfume he once said he liked. I kept my bedroom door locked, but it didn't matter. Aiden was everywhere, in the hallway, in the kitchen, in the way his fingers brushed my lower back when no one was looking, and in the way he lingered. I caught myself checking over my shoulder more often. My heart raced when I heard Mark's keys jingle at the door. I avoided Emma's gaze like it could read my sins. I was unraveling, and Aiden knew it. One afternoon, as I folded laundry in the living room, he walked behind me and whispered, "You're thinking about me right now, aren't you?" I froze. My hands trembled around a towel. He didn't wait for an answer, just walked away. Smug, sure, leaving my pulse pounding in my throat. The cracks were starting to show, and I was running out of excuses. It happened on a Sunday. The house was quiet, Mark home for once, Emma out with friends, the weather thick and heavy with approaching rain. I was in the laundry room when Mark came in. His tone was casual, too casual. "Aiden's been different lately, closer to you. Is something going on?" The basket slipped from my hands. Clothes spilled at my feet like proof. I laughed. Too fast. Too loud. "He's just growing up. We're close. That's all." Mark didn't answer right away. He picked up a shirt, folded it, and said quietly, "It's not how he looks at me. Or Emma. It's how he looks at you." I froze. Before I could speak, I heard the door creak. Aiden stood in the hallway watching. His gaze didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He was daring me, daring both of us. I turned back to Mark, heart pounding. "You're imagining things," I said, but the words were paper thin, already falling apart. That night, Emma didn't say a word during dinner. She stared at me the way girls do when they know more than they should. After everyone went to bed, I locked myself in the bathroom, sank to the floor, shaking. A soft knock. "Aiden, don't. Please, not now." But it wasn't Aiden. It was Emma. "I heard you," she said, voice flat, terrified. "I saw you that night in the hallway." My world spun. I pressed my hand to my mouth, tears rising like a tide. Emma's voice broke. "You're supposed to be his mother." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I wanted to run, to vanish, but the truth was out now, and there was no way to put it back in the dark. It happened fast, faster than I was ready for. Mark came home early. I didn't hear the front door. I didn't hear his steps down the hallway. All I felt was Aiden behind me in the kitchen, his hand at my waist, his breath warm against my neck. And then, "What the fuck is going on here?" The voice split the room like lightning. I turned. Mark stood frozen in the doorway, his face pale, eyes wide, keys still dangling from his fingers. "No, no." He stepped forward. "Tell me I'm not seeing this." I couldn't speak. Aiden moved away, but it was too late. Mark's face twisted, not just in anger, but in betrayal, disgust. "You cheated on me with him? With my son?" He laughed, sharp, cracked. Then he shoved the fruit bowl off the counter. Glass shattered across the tiles. I flinched. "How long, Claire? How long have you been lying to my fucking face?" "While I worked, while I bled for this family, I tried to reach for him." "Mark, please, don't touch me." He backed away, fists clenched, voice shaking. "I don't even know who you are anymore." Emma stood behind him, her face white. She had heard everything. "Dad," she whispered. Mark looked at her, then back at me. "You destroyed this family," he said. He walked out. Emma followed. Aiden stood in the ruins of our home, staring at me. "I'm not sorry," he said, "but I was, for everything." And when the door slammed shut for the last time, the silence that followed was louder than any scream. If this ending broke you or made you think twice, share your thoughts below. Like if you stayed until the end. Subscribe for stories that don't play it safe.